What if I told you that Hamilton's third place in China was not a simple coincidence, but evidence of something that Ferrari cannot control? Because yes, he finished on the podium with the SF26 showing clear improvement, but within the team there is a much bigger concern than the result. Hamilton wasn't just faster, he was different. While Ferrari continues to struggle to understand why its car loses performance at key moments, Hamilton has found a way to squeeze out energy like no one else on the grid. Management that completely changes what the car can do on the straight. What we saw in China was not simply a good race by Lewis Hamilton. It was the first real moment in which Ferrari began to understand that it has a much bigger problem than it appears. Because while from the outside everything seems positive, a third place, an important podium, from the beginning of the weekend there were already clear signs. In qualifying, Hamilton showed a level that Ferrari had not seen in Australia, being competitive, aggressive and above all precise in key moments, something that allowed him to get fully into the fight with the best. But the real turning point comes in the race where he not only maintains that performance, but transforms it into consistency, control and execution that leaves many questions within the team. Because while the SF26 proves to be competitive in corners, stable in pace and capable of staying in the fight, there is a detail that begins to be repeated lap after lap. When the time comes to squeeze out the power on the straight, not all drivers are getting the same from the car. And that's where Hamilton starts to make a difference. His race to that third place was not a simple conservative management. It was a demonstration of how to optimize each phase of the stint, especially on a circuit like China where energy recovery plays a key role. More braking, more recharging opportunities, and there Hamilton begins to build his advantage, managing energy in a way that allows him to maintain thrust where others begin to lose it. And this is not a minor detail, because in this new technical context, energy is no longer just a complement, it is the heart of performance. The rulebook limits how much you can recover and how much you can deploy, but within those limits there is room for optimization. And what is beginning to be suspected in the paddock is that Hamilton and his previous technical environment master this optimization better than Ferrari at the moment. Meanwhile, on the other side of the garage, the situation is different. Ferrari continues to show that pattern that has been there since the beginning. A very strong car in certain conditions, but with a clear deficit when it comes to converting all that potential into pure speed in critical moments. That deficit, which is already spoken of in terms of several tenths per lap, is not just a question of power, it is a question of how the available energy is used. And this is where the real conflict begins. Because when a driver manages to squeeze more performance than the team itself expects, the internal reference is broken. You no longer know if the car is good, if the driver is making a difference, or if there is something in between that you are not fully understanding. And Ferrari, after China, begins to face exactly that scenario. Hamilton takes the podium, yes. But that third place does not bring peace of mind, it brings doubts. Doubts about the car. Doubts about internal comparison. And above all, doubts about whether they are really understanding the weapon they have in their hands. Because if Hamilton can do that with the SF26, the big question is, why can't Ferrari replicate it? And that's where the real drama begins. What happens after China can no longer be hidden, because the problem stops being technical and becomes structural within Ferrari. It is no longer just that Hamilton has achieved a podium, it is that he has exposed a difference that the team cannot clearly explain, and that, in Formula One, is the most dangerous thing that can happen. As the weekend's data is analyzed, an increasingly disturbing pattern begins to appear. It's not just that Hamilton was faster at certain times, it's that his way of constructing the lap, of managing the stints and, above all, of using energy, does not match what Ferrari had modeled in its simulations. And when the driver's data doesn't match the team's data, it means something is not under control. This is where the concept that begins to generate internal tension comes in, super clipping. This phenomenon, which on the surface is simply a limitation of the hybrid system, becomes a tool when mastered correctly. Basically, it is the point at which the car stops delivering all the available electrical power because it has exhausted its energy, and that is exactly where the differences are being made. While some cars fall on the straight, losing speed at the end, others manage to stretch that thrust a few more meters, enough to gain lap time. And according to everything that is beginning to be discussed after China, Hamilton is operating right on that limit but without crossing it. This is not illegal. It's not a direct trap, but it is an extreme optimization of the regulations. Because the system is completely monitored by the FIA. Sensors, energy limits per lap, flow control, everything is designed so that no one can exceed it without being detected. So if you can't break the rules, the only way to win is to interpret them better than everyone else. And that is exactly Ferrari's problem. Because while Hamilton seems to have a much more refined reading of how and when to deploy energy, the team continues to rely on more conservative, more predictable, less aggressive maps. This explains why the car can seem competitive in normal conditions, but loses that extra when a perfect lap or defense on a straight is needed. And this is where the conflict escalates. Inside the garage, the comparison with Charles Leclerc begins to be inevitable. Not because Leclerc is performing poorly, but because there is now a direct reference that reveals the limitations of the system as Ferrari is using it. And that generates a silent but very dangerous tension. Because in Formula One, when two drivers have the same car but different results, the team always has to make a decision. Do you adapt the car to the driver, or do you adapt the driver to the car? And Ferrari, after China, still does not have a clear answer. But the problem doesn't end there. Because in parallel, another even more delicate front begins to emerge. The issue of hot compression ratio, a gray area of the regulations that could be giving an additional advantage in efficiency to the engine, and that the FIA has already decided to monitor more closely in the coming months. This adds another layer of uncertainty, because if part of the advantage is not only in the electrical management, but also in how the thermal engine is optimizing its performance, then Ferrari is not only behind, it is playing a game that it still does not fully understand. And that completely changes the panorama. Because it is no longer about bringing aerodynamic improvements or small adjustments. Ferrari has proposed a plan, evolution in Japan, a strong package in Miami, but the core of the problem, energy efficiency and power delivery, is something that cannot be solved in weeks. It is a problem of concept. And meanwhile, Hamilton continues to perform. It continues to show that the car can do more. It continues to push the limits of what Ferrari believes is possible. And that generates internal pressure that increases. Because every time Hamilton performs above expectations, it becomes clear that Ferrari is not exploiting its full potential. And every time that happens, the team loses one key thing in Formula One: control. And when a team like Ferrari starts to lose control of its own performance, what comes next is not a simple technical improvement. What begins to take shape after China is not just a technical disadvantage. It is a scenario that can completely break Ferrari's stability throughout the season. Because when a problem does not have an immediate solution, and is also linked to a deep understanding of the car, what comes is not a simple improvement, it is an escalation of internal pressure. Ferrari has already defined its roadmap. Japan would bring adjustments, Miami a large package, and later possible solutions in the area of the engine and energy efficiency. But here's the real problem. None of those solutions directly attack what Hamilton has made evident. Because what he's doing doesn't just depend on a new part or an aerodynamic upgrade. It depends on how the entire system is interpreted and used together. And that is not copied from one weekend to the next. And while Ferrari tries to close that gap, the clock is ticking. Every race that goes by without fully understanding that energy management is a missed opportunity. Not only against Mercedes, which has already proven to dominate that aspect, but also against McLaren, which comes with an extremely solid base from 2024. And this is where the conflict reaches its peak. Because internally, Ferrari is beginning to face a very delicate situation. Hamilton is leading the way, but the team isn't sure they can follow him. This creates a chain effect. First, pressure on engineers who must reinterpret data that does not fit their models. Then, pressure on the technical management, which has to decide whether to change the development approach. And finally, pressure on the relationship between drivers. Because even if it is not said publicly, the comparison with Leclerc becomes inevitable. And in a team like Ferrari, where the internal balance has always been fragile, these types of differences can escalate very quickly. It's not just who is faster. He is the one who understands the car best. And when that response begins to lean clearly to one side, the dynamics change. But there is something even more important. The FIA has already set its sights on certain gray areas of the regulations, especially in relation to engine efficiency and the famous hot compression ratio, which will be monitored more rigorously in the coming months. This opens a new scenario. Because if part of the advantage we are seeing is linked to interpretations of the regulations that could be limited in the future, then everything can change again. But until that happens, Ferrari has to compete at a disadvantage. And that brings us to the big conclusion of this whole drama. Ferrari is not only fighting against other teams, he is fighting his own lack of understanding. Hamilton has shown that the car can perform better. But it has also shown that that performance is not completely under the team's control. And in modern Formula One, that is the most dangerous thing there is. Because when you don't understand why you're fast, You also don't know why you can stop being one. Ferrari can keep the result with Hamilton's third place, with the feeling of having taken a step forward. But the reality is much more uncomfortable, because that result is not born from clear mastery of the car, but from something much more fragile, a performance that the team itself still does not fully understand. And therein lies the real danger. Hamilton has shown that the SF26 has more potential than Ferrari is exploiting. It has been able to find performance in a critical area such as energy management, right where the team is showing its greatest weaknesses. And that completely changes the narrative, because it's no longer about improving the car. It's about understanding it. Ferrari is at a crossroads right now. You can follow your plan, bring evolutions, trust that development will close the gap, or you can accept that the problem is deeper, that it is at the basis of how they are interpreting this new technical concept. And while they hesitate, Hamilton advances. Every race in which he manages to extract that extra will be further proof that the car's limit is not what Ferrari believed. And every time that happens, the internal pressure will grow. Let me know in the comments what you think about all this.